And we'd always joke.
I think so.
What are we gonna sell 40 bullets here? December, like,
I would have picked Brad to know that.
we'd go on a flight and the ambient temperature.
Well, that's where I pray a lot. So it does make sense.
We all do.
February 2nd.
Actually helped open the Flying J. That was one of the original workers.
February 2nd, 1980.
Is that right?
Were you really?
The front out there used to be like a fast food place. I was one of the guys that opened that part out. I pretty much worked every role. Manager all the way.
I'll never forget that. The next night.
Well, strangely enough, none of our boys go for it. I didn't know you did that.
What's that?
I didn't know you worked out there.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. Long time ago. Been around.
Did that open around like 1990 or what did it after that? Okay, so mid to late 90s.
I was 16, 17.
Yeah.
So it's not there's no incentive.
Yeah.
You know what was interesting? We were talking about this the other day. Is when they went out there, you know, there was nothing out there. I mean, you kind of forget that now with everything that's out there.
The DC and everything else out there.
Heard we might continue maybe tomorrow. We need to be out of here before 8 o'clock.
Could be in there.
Could be any time.
It's,
Have you heard that too?
why, you talking about, yeah.
Another one coming.
Yeah, it's just possibility. Nobody can do it.
Jackson just walked in.
Generation ability. Pretty well. It's been a hell of a work. Yeah.
Interesting.
Power production.
Oh, I bet.
I know, it's crazy.
Good, sir. Being able to stay warm out there?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I've been doing such a good job. It's cold.
Soon be spring.
Ah, yeah. Just glad we're over that -20, -70.
I was hoping we'd get together too, and to see my.
One of them.
I've been around a long time, and it's been a while since it's got that cold. I've been around here a long time. I don't remember what it was like.
Not for that long.
Right.
Oh, I'm telling
I got to 6 today or whatever.
I'm doing well, and you? Wait till it's 40.
Right.
We're gonna be in shorts and tank top. Morning or afternoon. So that'll maybe give you some background.
Oh man, new speaker and everything. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Good, and you? Good. Hey, Jimbo? You shaking hands yet? Oh, 30 people. 30 people.
So I started talking.
It never got hot there.
Bobcats quite at night.
I don't know.
Yes. I appreciate it. Yes. And I do recall.
I really enjoyed that. They were just turnaround. Granddaughter's looking for that. I I live down that way.
Good to know.
Central City.
Sure.
One of the
Galen thing off.
Then you went to You were on, you were sheriff and you're up out there. You know, Jim, I know you're going to be. That was before the telephone, so I never got a phone. I was gonna ride the damn horse through there. So what do you think? What item is it? 7, is that right? 7?
I got myself up.
No, that's not it. It is number 13.
Gentlemen, how are you guys?
Pete?
Saw you come breakfast Sunday morning.
You saw me what?
Cooking breakfast Sunday morning.
Were you there?
No, it was on Bookface.
Bookface. Okay, everyone, it is 5:30, which means it's time to start our meeting. Thank you for coming out on this, well, I think brisk is an understatement, evening. There is a small chance that we may have a rolling power outage at some point during this meeting. So I guess everyone get out your candle if that happens. We're going to call this meeting to order, and we will have the invocation by Mr. Dye, who's hopefully will come up to the microphone here, please.
I'm Dean Dye, and I represent Truckers Church. It's not my home church, but we just go out there to encourage the truckers and to pray for them and to share the Bible with them. And so, can everybody hear? Yeah. We'll just offer prayer here. Our Father, we thank you for this wonderful country. Thank you for this great city of North Platte. And we also thank you for these great people that volunteer to serve our great city. And so we just ask for your blessing on this meeting. Pray for your wisdom to be demonstrated here. And we pray that things will work out for the best of our citizens of North Platte. Thank you, Jesus, for all you do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Dye. Roll call, please.
Isley,
Here.
Tryon, Bulls,
Here.
Lucas,
Here.
Garrett, Conlon,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
Wood.
Here, barely. The current copy of the Open Meetings Act of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. The public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please identify yourself by stating your name and address. Please address the council through the mayor and limit remarks to 3 minutes or less. We respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms, we'll take compliments, of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. And again, we do accept public compliments, okay? We have a consent agenda. All matters under the consent agenda are considered by the city council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any city council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. First item, approve the minutes from the February 2nd, 2021 meeting. Second, place on file treasurer's report for December 2020. Third, approve application by Lazy RW Enterprises LLC for a special designated license on March 6, 2021 from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Minnow Bucket, 1013 South Jeffers Street for a tasting event. Number 4, approve the appointment of Jeff Bain to the North Platte Planning Commission. Number 5, approve the appointment of, I believe it's Carolee Lind, to the Housing Authority Commission. Number 6, approve the appointment of Jennifer Priest to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion Nisley and a second Reeker. Any discussion? Please vote. Okay, that item passes. Moving on, we have a public hearing. Consider recommendation by the North Platte City Planning Commission for an amendment to the North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 Future Land Use Map to amend certain lands from parks and recreation to commercial located at 2420 West Walker Road. That is a public meeting, so anyone would like to address the council, they're certainly willing to do so. Please approach the mic if you'd like to say something on this issue.
Good evening, I'm Rob Stefka with Commercial Investment Services, 212 North Dewey in North Platte. Thank
Hey,
you.
Rob, would you move the microphone a little? The folks at home can't hear you unless you're talking into that thing, so thank you.
And thank you for pointing that out. I
Yes.
compliment you for that.
Yep.
We represent a family group tonight, the O'Neills, and we're excited about the possibility of expanding a business there that will offer a number of services. And we'd just like to support that amendment for the future land use and also the transitional agriculture use. I think that second part of the public hearings in regard to the same thing. But there are plans for a new business out there that we're excited about, and it appears to us that that is going commercial. There's a couple nice businesses that are successful out there already, and those corners, two of the corners are not developed. There's a golf course and a family home and a couple of the others, but close to it. I think it is a good corridor for the future North Platte with Buffalo, and excited about the possibility and appreciate your consideration on it. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Stefka,
Mr. Woods.
is this going to be a little different from the other quick stops? Will it be a little bigger, offer a little more?
I might, Mr. O'Neill, do you?
Yes, please do.
So, you know, that's a good question. It was gonna be bigger before I had to pay for all the thawing out of pipes the last 3 days. But it may change a little bit. Yeah, I'm sorry. Dan O'Neill, 615 Sequoia Court. Is that?
Yep.
Okay, that suffices. Actually, this will probably be footprint size about the size of the Oasis Travel Center. This will be a fairly large building. One thing we do want to develop there that's a little bit different than our sites is to put a slough diesel island / premium fuel island on one side of the building to make easier ingress and egress for people pulling RVs, boats, things like that. We think that we can certainly serve some of the Lake Maloney traffic with that. And other than that, you know, there's a lot of food service in North Platte. It's pretty well saturated. One thing that we do now is we have a commissary at the Oasis Travel Center where we make some of our own breakfast sandwiches and things like that. So we will probably move our commissary there with a preparation and test kitchen. We will use that kitchen for our other quick stop sites where we have full-fledged delis and so on. So it'd be a little bigger footprint than our normal stores, but probably comparable in square footage to the Oasis Travel Center.
Okay. Thanks.
60 by 70. You're welcome. Any other questions while I'm up here?
Mr. Carmen, did you have a question?
No, it was answered. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone have any other comments to make? It does not appear that we have any, so we could entertain a motion to end the public hearing if someone would like to make one.
I move we end the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion Reeker, second Nisley to end the public hearing. Please vote. Okay, that motion passes. Coincidentally, we have another public hearing. Oh, apologize.
I'd be happy to make a motion.
Please make a motion. Sorry about that. I got ahead of myself there. Sorry, Dan.
I move to adopt the recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission for an amendment of the North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 Future Land Use Plan to amend certain lands from Parks and Recreation to commercial located at 2420 West Walker Road indicated on the attached map.
Second.
Okay. Motion Lucas, second Vols. Do we have any discussion?
I'm curious, Mr. Mayor, the property to the west there, the golf course, is that designated as Parks and Recreation as well?
Do we have anyone that knows that here? Judy, could you enlighten us on that, please?
Yes, Judy Clark, Planning Administrator for the City of North Platte. Yes, it's designated, I believe sheet 3 does show that in green, which is also designated as Parks and Recreation.
Okay, so that Parks and Recreation doesn't necessarily mean that it's government-owned property.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Most of the, you'll see like, most of those areas that are kind of open that are golf courses, things like that, will be designated as Parks and Recreation or open space.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions on this subject or further discussion? Okay. Oh,
I just have a question.
go ahead.
Do we have any foreseeable plans for the remaining area that's designated as parks out there?
Judy, do we have any?
I mean, I'm just curious, I guess.
Mayor Kelleher, Councilman Tryon. As of right now, I don't think that we have anything solid, but that particular area was designated as parks for the city when the city took ownership of that property. So that particular area is designated as Future Park, and a lot of people refer to it as South Park.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor?
You have the floor, Ed.
So, Ms. Judy, regarding that then, that section that is highlighted in red, if memory serves me correctly, the city purchased that from St. Elizabeth Ann Seton's Church. That was where our rectory was. And I think the septic system would have been about in the middle of Buffalo Bill Avenue. And so when Buffalo Bill was constructed, that property was then sold, I believe, to the city. So I guess I'm curious about the designation to make sure that that property is actually falling into the Parks and Recreation zoning area.
Mayor Kelleher, Councilman Reeker, I cannot speak to that. I don't have any knowledge of who we purchased it from or how it was purchased, but this particular portion, I believe, was original right-of-way for the Buffalo Bill, if my memory serves me correctly. And so this piece right along there was separate from the additional piece to the east.
Right.
And so the land use is different than zoning. So this land use map shows it as open for parks and recreation, because at the time when the comprehensive plan was established, that was kind of what it was used for and what it was probably predicted to be used for in the future. Now, as times change and things change, your comp plan can change. As you are all aware, we've changed the comp plan in the past. And so for future development, to make it easier for development of something different, because a comp plan is just a guide. It's not a solid set in stone, it's just a guide for future development. So when you are originally doing this, and I believe this comprehensive plan was done back in 2012, that was what it was anticipated to be, but then it's always there to change for.
Okay,
And
all right.
that's why we're here for that.
All right, thank you.
Do we have other questions? Seeing none, let's call the question on this one. Please vote. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, Matt, is it safe for me to say public hearing again? Okay, good. Okay. Okay, we have another public hearing, number 8. Consider recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission to adopt ordinance number 4054, rezoning certain lands from an A1 transitional agricultural district to a B-2 highway commercial district located at 2420 West Walker Road. This is the same piece of property in the previous item. And we are in a public hearing.
Mayor Keller, would you like me to read the ordinance?
Yes, please do.
An ordinance of the City of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, rezoning the part of Lot 1 Doctor Subdivision and part of the northwest quarter of Section 17, Township 13 North, Range 30, west of the 6th Prime Meridian, North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Public hearing. Anyone have any thoughts or comments? Hearing none, we could entertain a motion to end the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion Vols, second Reeker. Calling the question to end the public hearing. Vols and Tryon are showing not voting. There we go. Okay. That motion passes. The public hearing has ended, and we could entertain a motion on this subject at this point.
I move, Mr. Mayor, to adopt ordinance number 4054 to rezone certain land from an A1 transitional agricultural district to a B2 highway commercial as shown on the attached map.
Motion Reeker, second Garrick. Do we have discussion on this item? Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
Has there been, either Mr. Mayor, Mr. Kibben, has there been any request from the applicants to waive hearings on this? Because this would go through 3 readings normally, correct?
Judy, would you like to address that issue for us?
Mayor Kelleher, Councilman Lucas, there was some discussion about that between myself and the applicants about waiving that. We had discussed it a little bit, and as they are, everyone is always in a hurry to go ahead and get started. They felt that allowing it to go at least one more reading, if that is what you would want to do. Now, if you do want to waive it, I'm sure they will not have any issues with that either.
Mr. Voles, you have the floor. Judy, hold on.
No question. I do see is this is probably timing is of the essence as we're coming up to it. So I would like to make an amendment to the motion. And I do move to waive the 3 required readings on ordinance number 4054.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Voles and a second by Lucas.
Isn't that a separate motion? I'm sorry. The motion to waive would be first, vote on that.
Right, that's where I'm headed, so. So we would now entertain in any sort of discussion on the motion to waive.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I don't want to delay your project, Dan, at all. But I think there's a reason why we have 3 readings, and I appreciate your willingness to accommodate us. I'm thinking personally that we ought to at least go one more round, and if we see no opposition, then I would certainly support, approving it on the second reading.
Okay, Mr. Carmen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if there was going to be opposition to this, it would have manifested itself by this time. And I'd like to see them get started as quickly as possible on this project. And so I would recommend that we waive the 3 readings.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Voles, you have the floor.
This came in front of Planning Commission a month ago, and at that time, I did receive a couple phone calls from landowners adjacent and across the way to this property. And we discussed, and I did my research at it at that point, and both parties were in favor of this project. They just wanted to, where they wanted to go was just to find out something about the recreational use, and we solved those issues there. So, but as far as the adjacent landowners and across the street, they were in favor of the project. So besides that, I haven't heard of any other issues with this property, and it's been out there for about a month, so thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
Yeah, to follow that, as you guys know, I'm pretty conservative about waiving readers. To follow Mr. Voles' comments, I feel like this has been pretty well publicized over the last month where it went to the Planning Commission, so I have less concerns with this because I think the neighboring landowners have had plenty of time to exert their concerns.
Mr. Woods, you have the floor.
I agree with you all. Well, not all of you, but yeah. That it is nice to move forward. But I'm also very conservative about waiving readings too. But I would vote for at least one more, for it to come up at least one more time. I don't really see where it would hold it up. I can't imagine I've thought about it. I can't imagine a reason I would vote against this. I think it's a good project. It'll be a boon to that area. But to err on the side of caution, I'd just like to give the public one more chance, in case there is something out there.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we're going to call the question. We're calling the question on the amendment that Mr. Voles. So if this passes, that means that this would be the only reading of this item. If this does not pass, then there'll be at least one more reading. Okay? Calling the question, please vote.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, could you say that one more time?
If this item passes, it means that this is the only reading on this item. If this item does not pass, then there will be at least one more reading of the item. Okay. You do still need to vote, Mr. Woods. Okay. And these require a 3/4 vote of the council to pass, so that means that this item fails, and there will be at least one more reading of this item at the next council meeting. Okay, now the amendment failed, so, or excuse me, did not pass. Don't think of it as a failure, Pete, it just didn't pass, okay? We will now return to discussion about number 8 itself. Do we have any further questions?
I guess Mr. Mayor,
You have
I'd
the
just
floor, Ed.
like to make a comment that I fully support the project. I have absolutely no qualms about you building that facility out there. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the community, and I really appreciate your willingness to invest in our community.
Ms. Tryon?
And I would like to echo what Councilman Rieger said. When I was looking at the property on the website, it was a little confusing because they showed houses sitting on there. So I guess my thought is maybe people need another couple of 3 weeks to learn about this project and to figure out where it's going to be and et cetera. So just my thoughts.
Other comments or questions? Okay, calling the question on number 8, please. Please vote. Item passes for this reading. Will be on the next council agenda as well. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to number 9, another public hearing. Consider recommendation by the North Platte City Planning Commission to adopt ordinance number 4053, amending the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, Chapter 156, zoning section 156.353, relating to design, materials, and installation standards for landscaping. Mr. Kibben, would you please read the ordinance?
An ordinance of the City of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, amending Chapter 156, zoning section 156.353, relating to design, materials, and installation standards for landscaping, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinance in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof in pamphlet form.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Does anyone have comments or questions on this item? Not hearing any, we could entertain a motion to end the public hearing.
I so move.
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Nisley to end the public hearing. Calling the question. Motion passes. The public hearing has ended. Now we could entertain another motion if anyone would like to make one.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4050 to rezone certain land from an R2 dwelling district to an I1 light industrial district on first reading.
Second.
A motion Nisley, was that you, Ed, that said second? Okay, second Reeker on item number 9. Do we have any discussion?
I think we're,
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry, Pete.
okay. Would you please repeat that motion, because I think we might be on the wrong item
Did
there.
I do the wrong one?
I believe so.
I think
Okay.
there's a documentation problem in there.
Yeah.
I think so.
Which one, which we're on item?
We're on item number 9.
Number 9, but I don't think it's got a motion in it.
You'd like to repeal.
Mine just says the same thing, but see, that's not what we're talking about.
Also
Maybe it's this one up here.
You
so
wanna
4053, I need to amend it.
Is it this one?
If we go through all 3 readings, I move to adopt.
Because there's nothing
ordinance
about an I-1.
4053.
Oh, you're right.
Oh, wait, Okay.
I think the guidance may have just had a mistake in
I
it.
think there was, and I read the wrong line, I apologize. Let's do this again. I withdraw my motion. I move to adopt ordinance number 4053, an amendment to the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances, Chapter 156, zoning section 156.353, relating to design, materials, and installation standards for landscaping.
Second.
Okay, motion Nisley, second Vols. Do we have discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
am I understanding correctly that on the bottom of page 31, that that's to be included in that motion? I move to waive the 3 required readings on ordinance number 453, and I move to adopt ordinance 4053. Isn't that supposed to be part of the motion?
If you want to waive the 3 hearings, I just made the motion to have the 3 hearings. So we'd adopting it on first hearing. That's the way I took it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so
So the motion as stated does not include the line that you were questioning about.
So instead of as it's written here, 4050, you changed it to 4053.
That is correct.
Okay, sorry. I guess I would just like to make a comment on it. This is a very common sense revision. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I applaud whoever came up with this for doing it, because I think sometimes we forget about that you can't always put a square peg in a round hole.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
If somebody, let's say that today I had a lot and it was just too small to effectuate a normal sized building or what you wanted to do, can a developer go through a variance process on that today, or are they just stuck? I was just wanted to understand if there even is a process today to accomplish this.
There is, and Judy, would you walk us through what that looks like, please?
Judy Clark, Planning Administrator. Yes, Mayor Kelleher, Councilman Lucas. We do still have the Board of Adjustment for a variance process, so if you end up with a small-sized lot where you can't get parking, you can't get landscaping, you can't get the size of a building that's needed, they still will have the variance process. This is only for certain areas, certain times when it's just not feasible to put in 10-foot street side buffer, because maybe the lot's in an industrial area where it just does not make sense, in an area where you can't get grass to grow if you even installed a sprinkler system or something like that. That's what this is designed for. But the other, how you've indicated, the other times you would actually go through the Board of Adjustment. This is to try and keep maybe a few of them that would make a common sense choice from having to go through that extra step.
We happen to have a really good example, and Matt will take a second and describe it here to you.
Mayor Kelleher, Councilman Lucas, over the, late summer, it was, I had a business owner contact me, and they had one corner of their lot that was required to be landscaped. The rest of the area around their facility was concrete, and it felt like that should be a decision that we as a city organization could make without having to jump through hoops to go through the Board of Adjustment process. So that would be an example of one that we would utilize this for most frequently. If there was a deviation, it would still follow the standard process.
No, and I agree with Councilman Reeker. I just wanted to understand that if the variance process was still out there and make sure I understood it right. But I agree, it reminds me a little bit of administrative subdivision replat. Under certain circumstances, you can do that, but then there's others that go through the full process. This has been a sticking point with some people, hasn't it, Judy? That developers locally or property owners that have that kind of situation. So I'm pleased to see it too.
Mr. Woods?
Mr. Mayor, does it cost the person going to the Board of Adjustment some to go there? Do they have to send out like certified letters to the people surrounding, or? I guess I should ask you, Judy.
We'll
I'm
let
sorry.
Judy describe the process to us, if you would, please.
Mayor Kelleher, Councilman Woods, yes. And it's not cheap to do a variance process. The initial application fee is $400, and then certified letters right now with mail service and everything the way that it is, it's about $8.97 a property owner. We have to notify property owners within 300 feet of that property. So just to do the application with the certified letters, it will roughly run somebody $525 to $550 or more, depending on how many property owners are in that area.
Okay, that's what I thought. I have one other question. Would this have to be a unanimous decision between the three of you, or would it just be majority?
I would hope it would be unanimous.
Well, yeah, but it might not.
But we would certainly come to a conclusion amongst all three of us before we made a final determination.
Okay.
We would be on the same page before we provided input.
Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts or questions? Seeing none, calling the question, please vote on item number 9. Okay, item number 9 has passed. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the regular agenda. We still have power, so we're in good shape. Thank you, everyone, for indulging my sense of humor on this cold night. Okay, number 10, final reading to adopt ordinance number 4050 to rezone certain lands from an R-2 dwelling district to an I-1 light industrial district located at 614, 617, and 619 North Grant Avenue. Mr. Kibben, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, rezoning the south half of Lot 4 and all of Lot 5, Block 6, Town Lots Company, North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, and Lot 8 and Lot 9, Block 7, Town Lots Company, North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you. We could entertain a motion at this point if
I
someone would
move
like.
to adopt ordinance number 4050 to rezone certain land from an R2 dwelling district to an I1 light industrial district on final reading.
Second.
Motion, Vols, second. Is that you, Mr. Woods? Mr. Woods. Do we have any discussion on this item? Hearing none, calling the question. Please vote. That item number 10 passes. Moving on to item number 11. Second reading to adopt ordinance number 4052 to create special water improvement district number 4 to replace the existing 8-inch water main with a 12-inch water main along Jeffers Street from A Street to Leota Street, thence east to Dewey Street. Mr. Kibben, would you please read the ordinance?
An ordinance creating special water improvement district number 4 in the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, and describing said special water improvement district and improvements to be constructed therein.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4052 to create special water improvement district number 4 on second reading.
Second.
Motion, Garrick. Second, Woods. Do we have any discussion on this item? Mr. Vols, you have the floor.
This is, this item came upon us 2 weeks ago, and there seemed to be a little bit of timing is of the essence here. So there was talk about possibly waiving all 3 readings at that point, and I disagreed with that. But this time right now, I do feel it would be appropriate so that the planning process can get established to be able to waive our final reading and pass it at this point. So I would move to waive the 3 required readings on ordinance number 4052. And I move to adopt ordinance number 4052 to create a special water improvement district number 4 in an amendment to.
You're just making a motion, you're not making an
Someone's-
amendment.
It's not, okay, but there's a motion out there, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, you are making an amendment. Sorry, I looked at my sheet
So
wrong.
that would be an amendment to Mr. Garrick's motion.
Okay,
And I'll second the amendment to waive the 3 reading requirement.
okay, so we have a motion and a second. So the motion is Vols, second is Lucas. And this is an amendment to waive what would be 2 more readings, actually. Or excuse me, 1 more reading, hold on. And now we will entertain discussion on this amendment. Mr. Woods, you have the floor.
Maybe I'm wrong, but as I read it, it's in the motion that it will be accepted on the second reading. Isn't?
Normally, we would require 3 readings, and this, what that's stating on number 11 there is that this is the second reading. So theoretically, we would have 1 more if this motion does not pass, or this amendment does not pass.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yep, that's right.
I took it as we were going to pass it on the second reading and it would be done.
Well, if we agree to this amendment, that will be the case.
Yes.
Mayor Keller, I just want to
Mr.
remind
Nestle.
the other council people that special assessments will not be levied on the adjoining property. So, I mean, there's another reason to consider waiving it.
Right. Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would it be appropriate to ask if there's any people here from the public that would like to make any comments?
Yes, I was getting ready to. And I might remind the council, please remember to turn your mics on, because while we can all hear each other, the folks at home can't when you're talking. So, does anyone else in the council have any questions at this moment? And then I'll address Mr. Reeker's request. Okay, does anyone in the audience have any questions on this item? In just a second, I'm receiving a communication here. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to ask Brent to give us a little bit of background on what we're actually doing here and why timeliness is kind of important for the sake of everyone in the room. Mr. Berkland, would you approach the mic?
Mayor Keller, Brent Berkland, city engineer, and appreciate your time. And at the last meeting, there's some good questions and concerns brought up. The primary focus of the creation of the district at this particular point creates a finance mechanism for the bonding. The creation of the district by the council then allows the bonding option to be pursued as far as the financing goes. And again, as what was mentioned, the district, there's not going to be assessments to the adjacent property owners. The approval of this will allow us to move on. And one of the concerns on the schedule-wise is the timing when we start forecasting when we'd like to start the construction, working back the mandatory advertisement periods, the construction design period, working ourselves backwards. We're getting pretty tight. In general, with contractors, if they bid, it's hard to say emotional, but if they're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, they bid higher than if they bid with an empty schedule in front of them. So that is one of the concerns of being more of the essence, is trying to get it done sooner so that we can hit a good bid window to get the better bid price. If we go bidding in the middle of summer, we're going to get summer prices. That's because that's where their heads will be at that time.
So Brent, let me ask you a question. So
Yes.
tonight, what we're really doing is potentially approving the district, and then this item would come before the council again at least 1 more time. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, at a minimum, we'll have the award of the project to bring for you. So we'll have discussions with contractors and any concerns of who might be doing the project. That will be brought up at that time. In the meantime, we'll also have communication with property owners during the process as well. So those were some of the concerns that were expressed, making sure that there's good communication on the project, and also concerns that we get a good contractor in a very visible corridor that can really disrupt the public. So those items have processes to deal with them as we move forward.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Berkland? Thank you, Brent. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, by my notes, I have that we're about to vote on the amendment. So if this amendment passes, this will be the last reading of this item. Okay? Calling the question on the amendment. Okay, the amendment passes. We are back to the original motion by Mr. Garrick. And if this item passes, this is the last reading of this. Okay? Any further discussion on this item? Okay, calling the question, please vote. Okay, number 11 passes. So that is the last reading of this item. We are on to number 12. Adopt resolution amending Schedules 1 and 2 of Chapter 78 of the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances relating to parking regulations. And I know that several of you have a very long list in your council books here to examine, but we would entertain a motion on this item, if anyone would like to make one. And then I will invite Mr. Berglund to have a little discussion about this before we go any further.
I move to adopt the resolutions of Schedules 1 and 2 of Chapter 78 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of North Platte.
Second.
Motion Nisley, second Reeker. Discussion. I would like, if you guys don't mind, to ask Mr. Berglund to hit the high points here. There's a lot of information there. And I'm going to have him hit the high points, and then you guys are welcome to question him. So,
Thank you, Mayor Kelleher. Again, Brent Berkland, City Engineer. I thought I'd give you a little bit of the background behind this to how we got to where we're at, and then kind of explain what we went, or methodology of how we went through this. The point that started this was the GSA, the Government Service Administration, had contacted us around the federal building at the old post office. There was 15-minute signs in front of the post office, and the ordinance had 30 minutes in the ordinance, and because it wasn't the post office, they're transitioning it to the VA, the Veterans Administration, has clients come in there in 15 or 30 minutes, whichever, it doesn't work. And so that started the process. At the time, we were also working on downtown 6th Street. The road geometry has changed, and so some of the parking in the ordinance did not fit what was physically on 6th Street. And also, at the same time, we were working with the downtown folks on some of the parking lot and how they could be used for the business or utilized. So some of that discussion happened as well. The schedules haven't been changed in a while. So visiting with Mr. Kibben, our thought was we should go through the whole thing line by line, and if we're going to make significant number of changes, let's go through the whole thing and make sure that it makes sense. So what you see is the work of that we went through this line by line. We physically went to each one of these spots, and we also visited them via internet, Google Earth, Street View, multiple times as we went through them. And so that was the background behind it, and so I gave you some highlights that we're changing the parking times around the post office. One other piece that we had is the schools. The loading zones were 8 to 4. We changed that to 7:30 because the school times had fluctuated a little bit, and we wanted to make sure that we left the window open enough around that time. We had quite a few housekeeping items to make things either more clear or to make it more simple. We did have a few areas of no parking that were added. One was, we have, in my head, there's like 2 South Jeffers parts. There's a part that goes by Sonic, by Perkins. That area is technically designated as parking, but it's not functional for parking. So that was one area. Platte Oasis going to the east, over by Dunkin' Donuts, that's striped for 3 lanes. It's 2 lanes and a turn lane, center turn lane. That's wasn't designated for not parking. And then over by the high school, when the old high school was there, there was no parking on the high school side. Well, the new high school isn't new now, but the same parking is there. Most faculty, staff, students, they park in the lot. So we thought we should remove that parking restriction so that the neighborhood can use that parking legally. I'm sure they probably do, because why not park on that side of the street? So those are some general highlights of some of the things that we went through. And as you can see, we have multiple pages through there. But one of the things on the downtown part is we wanted to have a little bit more time to go from 2-hour to 4-hour parking on some of the parking lots, so that it would allow people to be downtown longer. And that's something that we've talked to the Downtown Association, was things to, encourage, not discourage people from being in the downtown area longer for shopping, eating, those type of things. So that's kind of a brief summary of multiple pages. So if you have any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Vols?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Berglund, not so much a question, but I visited with you earlier today because I really did not want to drive to all these parking locations. But I felt I wanted to do my due diligence. So you returned my phone call, and after talking to Mr. Berglund, I just want to thank him and his staff. This is a daunting project, and he has gone through and done a very nice job from what I can see and what he's explained to me. And the one thing that just keep in mind is that this is a living document, as you explained to me today. So a living document means that it can be changed. It is not set in stone. So as other areas of town, or if we have businesses that come to us and say, this 30-minute parking or whatever does not work for us, we can change it. But this is just a great way to update our parking situation in North Platte. So thank you and your staff very much.
Mr. Garrett?
So since this is a living document, do any of the changes in here need to come before the council?
As far as Mayor Keller, Councilman Garrick, could you rephrase that question? I'm not following.
So business A comes to you and says, it's 30-minute parking, doesn't make sense. I'd like it to be an hour. Is that something that is required to come before the council, or is that something that you can manage?
That's correct. It's in the ordinance and in this parking schedule. So for any of these to change, it has to come before the council. And that was some of the thought process of why we went through every line, is we didn't want to come to you with the GSA for just the post office, and then a month later come down, the downtown wants to change one of the lots from 2-hour to 4-hour, and then we need to change the school to 7:30 instead of 8. That was the thought process. You're 100%, you're right.
Gotcha.
And that's why we went through the whole document to update it, to clarify it, and again, Tim, but you're right, that's what would happen. That would be the process. If a GSA wanted to change it to 4-hour and made that request to us and everybody agreed, it'd have to be by council action.
Well, we appreciate your due diligence on that and doing that work. And thank you for doing that.
Mr. Lucas?
Just an opportunity to give you a little feedback that kind of ties the high school area. I've had, I think, 2 constituents contact me in just personal observations as we are working on this subject. I'd love to see us look at that whole high school area, maybe within a 2 to 3 block radius, and just look at stop signs, corner visibility, because of the number of young drivers we have in that area. I've had a number of people over time tell me that they'd like the city just to take a little closer look at maybe that 2 to 3 block radius of the city for primarily corner visibility and stop sign, yield sign opportunities. So again, that's kind of ties to this, but I just thought I'd share that feedback with you. I was going to save it for the 1 and 6 meeting, but I'll just give it to you now. Okay. So, but thank you for all your work.
Ms. Tryon?
Mr. Berglund, I just wanted, you mentioned the Downtown Association, and this is maybe not really applicable to this, but Do they encourage the employees that are working downtown to use the city parking lots rather than parking in front of their stores? I mean, I know it's probably hard to regulate, but at one time it was really hard to get a parking place just to run into the gas company to pay the bill because of employees were parking along that street. So
Mayor Kelleher, Ms. Tryon, that's a great question, and we had those discussions, and that was one of the reasons we changed a couple of the lot behind the Pawnee, the hotel is an example. It was, I believe, all 2 hour. We put 2 in part 4. And also we had some additional 4-hour parking because we wanted to encourage, like the employees, if you worked 8 to noon, you could go park a little bit further away, and we kept the 2 hour closer to the businesses. And I know they've had that discussion, and like you said, it's a public spot, and so anybody in the public can use it, including employees. And so that becomes a business. But I've heard businesses talking about encouraging their employees to park in a spot that would, encourage, their customers, make it easier for their customers to walk and park and shop. So
I did talk to one of the employees at the gas company, and they said they would like to have a designated parking spot just for their customers, but I guess it was not unanimous. Thank you.
Matt, did you have something to add? Okay. Other questions for Mr. Berkland? Mr. Carmen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Berglund, I want to add my thanks for all the work you've done. And you've really been hitting it hard. And on this parking thing, and just a comment, as long as I can remember, employees of businesses downtown have been criticized for taking up the parking. A guy'd go back by and mark the tires. The employee would come out, drive around the block and park again. And it's so, I think if there's a mechanism to which we can accommodate the employees so they don't have to walk 4 blocks to get to work, I think that's a good thing. I also think it's a good thing for the shoppers to have available parking on the street. So thanks for all your hard work.
thank you.
Ms. Tryon.
Thank you, Mayor. To Councilman Carmen, walking 4 blocks probably wouldn't really hurt too many of us. I mean, jokingly, okay? Because when you drive downtown and you're looking for a parking spot, and you know that a business has moved in there and they've taken up all the front street parking on both sides, I've double parked out in the street and put my flashers on in that one area, so.
Okay, before the police show up and start writing tickets, we're going to call the question on this one. Please vote. That item is passed. Thank you, Mr. Berkland, for all your hard work. Moving on to number 13. Authorize the mayor to execute documentation required to approve and implement software necessary for scheduling, operating, and reporting on the City of North Platte's public transit system.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute documentation required to approve and implement software necessary for scheduling, operating, and reporting on the City of North Platte's public transit system.
Second.
I don't know who said it first, but I'm going to give it to Mr. Vols. Motion Nisley, second Vols. Do we have discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
thank you. Can you give us a little background as to why we're looking at changing our software? It says in here, I believe, or somewhere I read that we had somebody locally develop a software package initially, and just curious why that's being changed now, and if we have looked into having local people develop software as opposed to going to this
Let me have Les give you some background. Is that all right?
Vendor, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you,
Mr.
Les.
Reeker? So about 2015, the federal government, federal and state told Mayor Lee that in order for us to continue receiving federal and state funds to run our buses, we had to provide reporting, keep track of how many rides we give, keep track of who calls, how much they pay for the rides, basically how much we spend and how much we receive. At the time, the one vendor that was on contract with the state, that they said, this is the guy you need to use, they didn't allow for what we call same-day rides. Basically, what their software was built to do is you build a bus route, you drive the bus around, you show up at this stop, this stop, this stop at set times throughout the day. What we do is self-day rides. Somebody can call in over to dispatch, over to bus station, and we'll send a bus out to pick them up at certain times. We'll also go back and pick them up. So at the time, the one software vendor wouldn't do that. We built the software. The city built the software. We've been maintaining the software. It was a temporary solution that's been, nearly 6 years now. We've been running the software. We're not developers, though. We don't have a programmer on staff. And it was pretty heavily scripted to be able to allow the bus drivers to see when they got to go to their next stop from an iPad, do all this stuff, and keep track of everything so we could fulfill our reporting requirements. And then once a year, the platform we run it on, they'll do an update to it, and we got to go back in and try and fix all of our scripts. There's a lot of coding went into it, and we're not coders again. So here recently, Mary Lee said, we need to adjust the software so we can do our extended bus ride services, start accounting for that and how much we're charging and receiving for those bus rides and everything. And so I asked Mary Lee at the time, I said, look, in order for me to do that, I've got to go back and try and rewrite the whole program because we didn't build it modular like a real programmer would. We kind of hacked it together like an IT department would. She went out and looked, and sure enough, the state has taken on 5 additional vendors through their contract. And one of those vendors, it does all kinds of stuff. It lets you keep up with vehicle maintenance, pre- and post-trip inspections, call and text reminders, but it does same-day rides. It allows for the call-in service. More importantly for me, anyway, is it's supported. I can call somebody and say, your software is broke, please fix it. And of course, there's the funding part of it. So the software itself is $40,000. It's about $10,000 a year to maintain the software. Now, through the Federal Transportation Authority, and it's one of the documents that we've got in here for signing, they're going to cover the implementation cost through the federal will cover the implementation cost, and then state and federal will split 90% of the first year's annual maintenance. And then it's $10,000 a year after that, but it's still 80-10 state and federal. So our cost would be as much as $1,000 a year going forward after the first year. And in addition to that, this year, Mary Lee's trying to get some of the CARES Act funding to pay for the remainder of it. So that's why it's locally developed, but it's locally developed by my department, and we're not developers. We're doing the best we can. We've been doing it for 5 years, so we've saved a heck of a lot of money that would have had to come out of the city's budget. But the amount of bus rides, the amount of revenue, the amount of expenditures that Mary Lee runs is on equal to, if you will, with bigger cities twice the size of North Platte, Grand Island, Kearney, and we probably need to be looking at something to better manage it, a piece of software to do it.
Les, doesn't this add cameras to the buses?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One of the documents is to put cameras in the buses. I run cameras over at the courthouse, and they save us a lot of money in lawsuits every year over in Lincoln County. And same situation here, a little more, environment's a little bit more that we could get in trouble over it, if you will. So yes, part of this is to put cameras in the buses themselves and record the rides.
So,
Mr. Reeker, you still have the floor.
thank you. Excuse me, Les, if I understand you correctly, we're already supplying this documentation to the federal government.
At a bare minimum, I mean, the bare minimum piece of it, which is we do
keep track of who we give rides to, we keep track of how much they pay for it, and then Mayor Lee puts that together with how much she spends. So we send that expenditure and revenue to the government, to the federal government, so we can continue to get federal funding. But that's all our software does. I mean, that's the extent of it, and that's about all. That's a little more than we're capable of at this point, to be honest with you.
So you said it records who rode?
They keep track of who
By
who
name?
the call-in was.
By
Is it
name?
by name?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
It's
Well, I
nothing
guess-
fancy, though. It's a Google sheet. I mean, I'm not.
No, I'm not talking about, okay, by name, is that one of the requirements of the federal government? That you have to let them know who is riding by name?
Yes, sir.
Interesting. That's exactly why, one of the things that I was concerned about. I didn't realize that when I ride the bus, that somebody in Washington's gonna be looking at my name every time. One of my primary concerns about this, and I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't have it, I guess it troubles me that we seem to be getting ourselves into more and more government intervention. And it troubles me immensely that if I ride the bus, that it's gonna get sent to wherever it gets sent, I don't know. And there's gonna be a record of how many times Ed Reeker rode the bus. And I personally don't think that's the government's they have no business of knowing that.
And we don't record, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm certain we don't record private information, which is, it's actually identified to state, but, driver's license, social security number, any kind of bank accounts or anything like that. We don't record any of that information.
And I'm not, this is not to cast any aspersions on you, because that's not my intention, but one of the things that really does trouble me with where we are in our country today is we have this overarching government that wants to control every aspect of our lives. And when we accept the money from the government, we get to do what the government tells us to do. And I'm not sure that's a good road to be on. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Voles, did you, I'm sorry, Donna, I
No.
think he had his, okay. I'm sorry, maybe my eyes failed me. Ms. Tryon, go ahead.
Thank you. So an Excel spreadsheet would not record what's required? I mean, it doesn't sound really all that complicated, that in a cell phone.
Mayor Keller, Councilwoman Tron. So it's not just a spreadsheet, though. Each one of the cells in that spreadsheet, and this is the coding that I was talking about, required a lengthy script writing process. And the way it looks on the iPads to the bus drivers out there is your name is blue, and another bus driver's name on the spreadsheet is red, and how many, you got 9? Mm-hmm. 9 bus drivers out there. So when you pull up the spreadsheet on the iPad, on the tablet, all you gotta do is look for the blue squares. You know where you've gotta be in at what time. There's not to mention, in addition to making your square turn out blue, and it depends on how you log into the tablet, your squares, you'll see your squares turn up your color. It's also the fare and what type of ride it was. There's quite a bit of variables in there that we built into it so that you don't have to enter in a whole lot of data to record what kind of rides you did and all that. And again, we're not programmers, so we weren't forward enough thinking to say, someday we might have to add additional fares. We could change the fares, but we can't add additional fares to it without rewriting the entire thing for the ones that we have to go outside of town to pick up, the extended service we're doing. There's a whole lot of other features on this software. I mean, a lot of other that we probably should be doing that we're not doing, and there's no way I could build a piece of software to do it.
So you've created a scheduling system as well as a tracking system?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, Donna, I may have interrupted you there. Go ahead if you had another question.
That's okay. I guess I'm in agreement with Councilman Reeker. It seems like the government just keeps pushing and pushing, and I don't know the history of the busing system here in town, but it appears to me that maybe the city maybe obligated themselves through federal funding at one time, and so when you once do that, it's hard getting them out of your back pocket.
Yes,
and not that you don't need it, not that it's required, but, so is this outfit the only people? You said something about there were 5 companies now So
Mayor
was
Keller?
there bids on this? Is this the cheapest one? Is this do the minimum amount that's required, or how was this one selected?
So, the state has a contract, and if you're gonna, back to your point, Bo, if you're gonna continue to receive state funding or federal funding, you need to use one of the contract vehicles that they've already vetted. And this is one of 5. There's 5 other ones out there. Now, we do know that at least 2 others that Mary Lee has thoroughly investigated before don't allow us to do the same day rides. I'm not sure how many others you've looked at. This was the first one she found, she looked into that would allow us to do the same day rides. And it's a nice piece of software. I mean, it's good stuff. But bottom line is, if we go, and back when we did our own, if you go with somebody that's outside of the state's contract, well, you've got to pay for it. And
Who's paying for it?
the city's got to pay for it out of our budget. Let me put it to you that way.
Right, okay. So, but some funding is state and federal and CARES Act, and of course, we know where all that money comes from.
Yes, ma'am.
So, thank you.
Mr. Voles, you have the floor.
My 60,000-foot view of this is economics, and unless we want to take on this, this is the one area of our government that runs at a net zero, and we actually maybe make a little bit, and we provide a tremendous service to our citizens of North Platte. The safety feature, just purely by litigation and the possibility of not having liability claims, is tremendous as well to keep our insurance and our names out of the front page of the North Platte Telegraph. If God forbid, we were to strike a young child or an adult, it doesn't matter who. And I'm assuming there's cameras inside of the bus as well that do protect our bus drivers, 3 of them, in the event of foul play going on inside a bus. So for a pure safety feature, I think this is an excellent tool that we need to put in our arsenal. And unless we want to fund this for the citizens of North Platte, I don't know that we have an obligation. Names are public record. I doubt the federal government is wary enough to be able to track what's going on, and maybe it can come back and help us if a criminal got on the bus and utilized the bus to go to a different location. I could see the police department being able to utilize that information to aid us to capture the bad guy. So I don't think it would be used in an evil sort of way, but then I'm a kind of half glass full guy. I don't think everyone's out to get us, nor am I saying you guys are too. I agree to a large extent to your opinions there. But in this case, unless we want to fund this ourselves, I do not know that we have an option on an economic standpoint. That's my soapbox, so thank you.
Mayor Keller, I just want to comment, if you have one of these, you're being tracked. I mean, I don't want to be paranoid, but having a camera in a public bus doesn't really disturb me as an infringement of my rights. So if you really want to protect yourself, throw this away. I'm going to tell you that.
Mr. Lucas, I'll get you next on it.
Just to follow that quickly, if you pay for anything with anything in the MasterCard Visa Discover network, it's the same thing in today's world. So I've been very concerned, as I've expressed before in budget, about what we're spending on insurance. And so I was really pleased to see the safety and liability protection features. If you look in the private business world, whether that be people doing taxis, private buses, you think of things even like car washes, car mechanic shops, just having security cameras in their businesses saves them immensely on liability claims and all that. So I was pleased to see that as an aspect. I hope it helps contribute to us eventually trying to drive some of our insurance costs down.
Mr. Carmen, you have the floor. I won't forget you.
You know, I don't like the idea of a big brother looking over my shoulder all the time either. But I can tell you that, from an old cop's perspective, cameras on businesses that focus on what's going on in parking lots save a lot of lives and help the cops catch a lot of bad guys. We got a murderer because of a camera down on the mall we may not have caught otherwise. And so I think it's a trade-off. I think we have to view it in terms of what's in the public interest. And we have to give up a little bit of our privacy in order for that to happen. Nonetheless, I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Mr. Garrick.
Lane, excuse me, as someone who has done the process that you're speaking of cobbling softwares together and scripting, I thank you very much for the money you've saved us. As also someone who understands that process, I think it's time we walk away from that process because I know how that works. So I do support this. Thank you.
Ms. Tryon, I've been promising you for 5 minutes now.
That's
so.
okay. I'm coming back for a second one. So does the city, do we have any idea what it would cost if we didn't accept federal state funds, if we just ran our own bus system based on the income from that? I mean, is there any figures on that? Maybe that's one for Dawn, I don't know.
We don't want to speculate too heavily here, Marilee, but please give us your thoughts.
Mayor Kelleher and Councilman Tryon, I'm sure we could dig that up, put it together, but I wouldn't know tonight. I couldn't say.
Okay.
I guess I would like to know that, because maybe, I mean, if it's something that we don't have to deal with the federal government, we could get some, some of those safety measures installed, maybe to lower our insurance or whatever, but then it wouldn't have all this reporting requirement and all this federal, state government down our neck.
Okay. Matt, would you look at providing that at some future point in the next month or so, please?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one final question, Les. As far, I understand, and I totally agree with you folks as far as the idea of protecting us from liability and litigation, and I don't have a problem with that. And I guess the biggest concern I have is just the recording of people's names that travel on a bus. I can't imagine that if I was to go into New York City, if they run the subways anymore, I'm not sure, but.
Well, I tell you what I'll do is I'll certainly go back and look. When they bring this software in, part of that upfront, part of the cost of that implementation, 40 grand, is somebody's going to come from the company. Well, and they probably won't come. They'll remotely get on a computer with us, and they'll configure this software bit by bit. I will find out what the state or federal requirement is. I mean, because I think that we do it now so that we know who it is that we're picking up. We know that we're going to pick up Joe at whatever the address is. We'll see. We'll see if that is the actual, if there's an actual requirement in there to record names or any other information about our clients.
And if that isn't a mandate, I personally wouldn't have an issue with it if that data was purged every day so that there's no running record.
Mayor Keller, may I just address one simply. You buy a bus ticket, they got your name. You buy a plane ticket, you gotta give your name. Public transportation, you give your name all the time. What is this deal about some person phoning in to go to a doctor here in North Platte and giving their name? You go into businesses want this information to see, who is the customer. There's a lot of reasons. There's beneficial reasons. I think this discussion is getting a little bit out of the realm of what I'm trying to say. I think we ought to focus on what we're doing. I'll be honest with you. This idea about I don't see it, Ed. You and I are good friends, but I don't see what you're getting at with this. That this is not an infringement of freedom.
Hold on a second, Mark. Marilee, did you have something of structure to add to this here?
Say the difference between us and a transit authority in New York City.
Microphone, please.
Oh, sorry. Is the difference between us and New York City with the big buses, we're a door-to-door service. And ever since 9/11, then we've been required to get the name, address of who we're picking up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Woods, you had requested the floor.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Les, can I ask you a question? As far as from an accounting viewpoint, with this program, can you print out the different areas that the ridership is? Like, oh, I know there's a contract with the hospital, and then the out-of-town stuff we've started doing, and then the in-town call-ins. We don't have a regular bus schedule anymore, right? But if we were to try one of those, so that the council could look at each area and see how it's doing, if we're losing money, making money, breaking even.
Mayor Kelleher, Councilman Woods, absolutely. The reporting that this software does is way beyond what we're capable of even. Send it off to show them what we spent and what we're getting. But yes, this will totally redo the way we do our reporting. There's going to be considerable amount of efficiencies, I feel, gained from this, putting this software in, not just in this, but a whole bunch of other areas as well.
Okay, and did I hear you right that the city's share would be about 1,000 a month?
After
the first year?
1,000 a year.
Oh, 1,000 a year, that's
Yes,
right. Okay, thank you.
After the
Sounds
first-
much better.
After the first year, you said.
Matt, I think you have a couple things to add here.
Just a couple things that struck me as we were conversing about this software package. I think one of them is the maintenance and tracking how we're using our buses and making sure that we're going about that wisely and that we're taking care of our assets. So I think that's an important component of it. And then the second part of it, and Les can speak to it better than I can, but Les's shop within the city organization is a very small shop. And we have a system here that is antiquated, built in-house, and requires a significant amount of maintenance from his folks. Folks that could be better utilized within our organization on other activities than, as he states, coding. And so I think those are really good points. This is a comprehensive software package that will assist in the improvement of the city's finances long-term.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Ms. Tryon,
Can I make a motion?
you
if I can
could
stumble
make an
through it.
amendment if you would like.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to amend, maybe delaying this on the agenda until we get some more information as to really what is required and how much it would cost the city to provide this service, maybe at a much reduced rate. I guess overall, I'm just kind of like wanting to get the government out of our back pocket. Not that I don't think that this, I want the bus service to continue, but I don't like to have the heavy hand. That makes sense?
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Mayor, is the motion to delay the implementation tonight?
Delay voting on this until we get some more financial information as to what it would cost the city for us to just be independent of the government.
That's to delay it for one session?
Ever how long it takes.
So are you making a motion to table? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I guess that would be a better way of putting it.
Okay.
I picked a good one, didn't I?
We have a motion to table.
Until further financial information is made available.
Okay. Do we have a second? There is no second, so the motion fails. Do we have any further discussion on this issue? Calling the question, please vote. Okay, this item passes. Moving on to, thank you everyone, excuse me, moving on to item number 14. Approve mayor's appointments of department heads. We'll just remind everyone if there's any discussion about any of the department heads, we do not do that with the public sitting here, so we would need to adjust ourselves if we're going to have a discussion about that. If there are no discussions, then we would entertain any motions.
I move to approve the appointment of department heads for the city of North Platte, Nebraska as follows. City Administrator Matthew Kibben, Director of Administration Finance Don Miller, City Clerk Angela Gilbert, City Engineer Brent Berkland, Fire Chief Dennis Thompson, City Attorney Terry Waite, Director of Library Cecilia Lawrence, Chief of Police Dan Hudson, Public Service Director Lane Grosseth.
Motion Nisley, second Carmen. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
I'd just like to say that I think we've got a great bunch of people working for the city. And I really appreciate what you guys do. I think it's wonderful that you're here tonight, you're supporting us and giving answers to our questions, and I just want to, what was the word you were using earlier? Congratulate?
Compliment.
Thank you.
I think the word was compliment, but we appreciate your spirit.
Can I amend my motion?
There wasn't a motion there. Be careful where you take us. Any other comments or discussion? Mr. Woods.
I would like to second Ed's comments. I haven't talked with all of you, but the ones I have always been very helpful and willing to answer any question from a guy who really has a lot to learn. And I really appreciate all the help I've gotten from all of you. Thank you. You're a great bunch.
Okay, calling the question. Please vote. This item passes. And we still have power. Okay, moving on. Yeah, thanks, Lane. Item number 15, motion for approval to refer the City of North Platte, Nebraska redevelopment area number 4 blight and substandard determination study as prepared by Hannah Keelan Associates, PC, to the City of North Platte Planning Commission for public hearing to determine if the proposed area qualifies as blighted and substandard. I'd just like to remind everyone the only thing we're doing here is potentially referring this to the Planning Commission, if this motion passes. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move to refer the City of North Platte, Nebraska redevelopment area number 4 blight and substandard determination study as prepared by Hannah Keelan Associates, PC, to the City of North Platte Planning Commission for a public hearing to determine if the proposed area qualifies as blighted and substandard.
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Woods. Do we have discussion on this motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
Yeah, two very brief comments. I'm excited to see this area get designated or considered for designation for this because this is a very challenging area to develop potentially with, if you look at soil conditions, floodplain, all that. The only thing I'd like for the planning commission to look carefully at when they get to this is where we're sitting with our total percentage allocation of blight and substandard, and just, I'd certainly be interested in their opinion of making sure we have enough, cushion, for lack of a better term, in all that. I mean, it seems like we should have plenty and be in a good position, but I would just ask that the planning commission takes a good look at that in their review. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, calling the question. This item number 15 has passed. Item number 16, approval of claims.
Mr. Mayor, move we pay the claim.
Second.
Motion Carmen, second Garrick. Discussion? Seeing none, calling the question. The claims are paid. That motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead, sorry.
You weren't going to make that motion again, were you? Okay.
I'll compliment you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Public agenda request. We respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. At this time, if anyone from the public would like to recommend something for a future agenda, I do have one in paper I'm going to read briefly, but if there is anyone sitting here, we would entertain you at the microphone. Okay, I'll read the one I have here. This is from Miss Tracy Sundstrom. She says, freezing pets, topic is freezing pets left outside and officials not able to help. Request to amend the Sydney ordinance for better clarity, allowing the rescue of neglected/abused dogs and cats in distress, in danger of harm and death. It goes on for another paragraph or so. So I've spoken to Tracy briefly. She described to me what their concerns are. As is the procedure with this process, we will pass this on for consideration to the relevant departments. Get back to Ms. Sundstrom in writing, and if this item warrants action by the council, we will bring it to you on a future agenda with the appropriate background and so forth. Anything else for the good of the order tonight? Mr. Reeker.
I'm going to let somebody else do it.
I think you set me up there.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Okay. Motion, Reeker, second, Garrick. Please vote, calling the question. Mr. Lucas, there we go. Okay.
Stick around for a while.
The meeting is over. Thank you, everyone. Go home and stay warm. Have a great night.
Stay warm, young man.